Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with Podcast 50. Wow, do we have a great one today. Get this. I've invited 3 highly successful investors to join me on Podcast 50 today. 3 independent, individual, different model investors. One is Stephen Washington from Philly. The other is Tom Kroll from Florida. And Gabriel Contreras from California. And I'm going to ask them several questions. This is going to be an information-packed 1-hour podcast. I know it's a little longer than normal, but it's just full of fantastic, usable information. Here we go. So, Stephen, tell us about yourself.
Well, again, hey guys, I'm Steve Washington. I'm based out of here in the Philadelphia market, right here on the East Coast. I've been in the business a little under 10 years now. And I like to say that I do more assigning of a contracts than actually wholesaling, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we get on a call. But yeah, I prefer to just be in and out of transactions. I do some rehabbing, but that's not really my thing. You know, we acquire all of our, or I guess the vast majority of our leads through direct marketing, sending out a ton of mail, you know, tracking down vacants, you know, calling vacants, doing the whole nine. And, you know, really enjoy the business. It's worked very well for me over the years. And we're on the same token, always looking to learn something.
Cool. How about you, Tom? Tell us about yourself.
Okay, one word, wholesaling. Awesome. I love it. Last month was my 2-year anniversary, and I am a full-time wholesaler, part-time wholesale coach. But I love wholesaling, and it's over in the Port St. Lucie, Florida market. And, getting ready to start my 3rd year here. So it's awesome. and I just mostly assignments. We do 98% assignments. Occasionally we'll do a double close, but almost strictly assignments.
And Mr. Contreras, Gabriel, tell us about yourself.
Yes, Gabriel Contreras, and I buy houses in the Bakersfield, Tulare, Visalia. That'd be a couple of counties, Kern and Tulare County. I've been doing that since back in the late 90s. The primary way that we buy houses is by using private investors. And my favorite way of doing it is by the use of terms. I like to focus on pretty houses, too many rehabs at the beginning, lots of work. And I'm a little bit on the lazy side of it. The reason why I like to focus on that is also for the multiple streams of income. Even though we use the same property, there's money to be made up front. There's money to be made in between while I hold the properties, and then when we turn around and resell, then we get the big paycheck. That's basically what our business format is.
So, ironically, here we have 3 guys on the phone, and they all do it a little bit differently. And I would consider, knowing them, that they're all successful, which is kind of rare sometimes. But they're doing it something different. So, Stephen, you're doing vacants and abandons, and you're assigning them. What does that take you? How do you find one? How long does it take you to get one? What do you make when you do that?
Great. Essentially, the vacant properties, it started out just tracking them down, just like anybody else, so driving for dollars, and we kind of took that system and kind of added to it and figured out ways that we don't have to drive around as much to actually find the properties. And then a full throttle skip tracing process to actually find the owner and where they're living at now or a current phone number. And we in turn try to give them a call or try to send them out a mail piece or sometimes actually even physically knock on their door. and we have scripts for all three of how we kind of approach that, because as everybody knows on the phone, the approach is everything, and so I guess the turnaround time, it absolutely varies. It can be as simple as picking up the phone and a seller saying, "Hey, I'm glad you called," to there's been times we've tried to track people down for multiple years even. And it's taken us a good while to find them. And that's okay, too, because in the vacant property business, sometimes the hardest sellers to find can also be, like, the most profitable. And so you asked me a 2 or 3 part question. Can you repeat the second part, Michael?
Well, how much do you make when you find one of these things? And what I find odd about what you do, by the way, is you're so off like what I do, because I'm just going after equity owners and trying to negotiate with someone who lives in the house or has a rental. You're actually going after someone who doesn't want the house, left the house. I mean, they don't even want anybody to know they own the house, and you're finding that person. How often can you do that? And when you do it, what's the payday like?
Yeah, so what I like to say, I'll tell you how I came upon it. I went to a conference, and the host of the conference told us to do an activity. And the activity was as follows. He said, look at every, your top 10 deals that you've done. And he said, just create a matrix. And he said, just talk about anything and everything about that deal. Was it purchased in a certain part of town, a certain zip code? Was the house in good condition, bad condition? Were there debt owed, not owed, free and clear, not free and clear? He said, just totally try to come up with every little small characteristic you can about the property, and then just write it down for like your top 10 deals. And I did that, and they all had 3 things in common. The first thing in common was that they were vacant. The second thing in common is that there were taxes owed on them. And then the final thing in common that they had were they were estate or probate property. So in other words, the owner was deceased. And so I said, well, look, and so basically he said, look, whatever your top 3 things are, that's where you should really be, spending your marketing dollars at. That's where you should be focusing on. And so I did. And so I guess our average profit that we make, it really, and I hate to say it varies, because within my market, we have such a disparity. We have houses that that can sell for $10,000, and then we have houses. I just closed on a house on Monday that it's worth about $315,000. So we have just a huge disparity. But I would say the vacant deals usually profit run anywhere between $15,000. You can multiply that 2-3 times over sometimes. It just really all depends. But I would say somewhere between about 15 and 20, 25, something like that. And
that model is an abundance for you. Would you say abundance would carry over to California or Florida or Texas or New York? Is it a model that people can use anywhere they're at?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with students in multiple markets, and it absolutely works. And the thing I always like to explain to people is a vacant house isn't necessarily like a beat down, ugly, just boarded up windows kind of house. I mean, you have vacant houses in every market, in every kind of marketplace. And so, yeah, it absolutely works everywhere. Some areas a little better than others, but yeah, it absolutely works everywhere.
Cool. Now, Tom, tell me about your average deal, how you find it, what kind of meat's in it for you, how fast you turn it over.
Sure. So in St. Lucie County, in the city, I should say, the average deal for us is luckily about 5 days. So the reason for that is we can pull title and get clean title back in about 3 or 4 days, and then the delay with the cash buyer. We're averaging about 7 days on average, but we can do it as quick as in 3. So we have a really quick turnaround time. The way that we find our deals is using your company, pretty much. We use a lot of direct mail, as you know. We are really great about tracking that. as far as, just on Steven's point with the vacant, we have been going over, we have been doing more and more of that. One thing that we found is, I think you raised a really good point, Steven, which is a lot of the vacant homes, they're not vacant based on how they look. One little program we've come up with to locate property is we put Post-it notes on the front doors of in a community, and then what we'll do is we'll get some initial phone calls from that, but more importantly, we'll go back the next day and see which house hasn't removed it. So that's a great way for us to find some vacant homes, and we've been doing more and more of them and closing some great deals. But most of our deals really come from direct mail. That's our bread and butter. As far as average assignment, right now we're very granular about tracking that. Our 3-month trailing for the last 3 months, our assignment fee has been $12,830. So that's the average assignment that we do. We get reports on that all the time, so I know what it is exactly. And it's that's about I would say is about a snapshot of where we're at right now.
It's interesting because my model is so far away from the assignment and wholesale models, and with that said, it's absolutely as far away as it can be from Gabriel's model. And I've known Gabriel for a long time, and I'm always impressed that he can actually take a non-deal, which I would consider a non-deal. Like the seller wants full value for their house and make 50 grand on it. I have no clue. And he gives them full value sometimes. So, Gabe, tell me about this way you put your matrix of deals together that cause you to make money up front, in the middle, and at the end.
Sure. You know what? Most of it is to blame the fact that I'm a little lazy. I prefer to do less transactions, even if it takes me a little bit more time in between, than to work a lot. A few years ago, I ended up finding a hobby that I really liked to do, so that took up a lot of my time. So we had to figure out different ways of doing it. Less transactions with bigger checks. Like I hear from both Stephen and Tom, I believe, it's also generated by marketing. It's all about the marketing. It's about creating plans that get sellers what they want. And, of course, there's a way that we can make a profit in between. When we talk about profits, the business model that I use is I need to be able to find a way to get 20% of what I believe the property to be worth in no less than $20,000. That has changed as time goes by. We've been doing this for, a couple of decades. So that changed. When we first started, that number wasn't it. And it got to the point where, if you can't see a clear 40,000, I wouldn't have done it. But time and circumstances will change that, and you need to modify your business model. My average profit per deal will then be, again, depending on what time frame we're talking about, $30,000 to $40,000. And I've done the $20,000 one, and I've done the $400,000 one. I was not smart enough to take advantage of an offer to sell one of my properties that I had that would have netted me $800,000, possibly $1 million, and kept it, and that was not a good choice. But the bigger numbers is where I'm focusing on, and of course they're further apart and in between. But it gets me that time that I want to do those other things instead.
Yeah, but you're taking a seller that has, well, like for me, I don't know about the other two guys, but for me, I want to see 30 or 40% equity on my contract. You don't necessarily have to see that on your contract, right? I mean, you'd like to, but you can put a deal together where you don't see that at all. Tell us about that.
Sure. I have to create it, and it's all based on, I guess, the old rules, the time value of money. If we have If we have time, then we can create the money out of that. I'm not sure if you want me to go into a little bit of some examples.
Yeah, give us an example.
I'm not sure how detailed. Okay. I mean, the most common one is rates. If I have to go and get an investor to front the money to buy a house to purchase it cash, I'm going to pay a high rate to use that money. If I can buy the house with, no interest or close to no interest, and if you just take a simple calculator and figure out, okay, I'm going to have this property. By the way, the average time that I have a property is usually between 12 months and up to 3 years. The longer it takes, the more money it creates. So that, time is a big factor into our plan on buying the property. And again, the rate is going to determine also what kind of profit center it's giving me. If I have a dollar amount that I borrow and have to pay no interest on it, my payments is going to be very little compared to what the property is giving me, thereby generating some profits. There is a way to pay full value, but when you talk about I paid full value, you still need to sit down and come to an understanding with the owners that there are expenses that are going to be paid whether you sell to a traditional buyer or us as investors, and that is one thing that we need to come and meet eye to eye on. And so that's when we talk about we paid full value. We're not kidding them. We will pay those expenses, but it doesn't mean we don't account for them. Does that make some sense?
It does, but let's assume so for someone that may be listening and may not be getting the depth of what you're saying, if I'm a seller and I'm willing to sell you my $200,000 house for only 10% or 15% discount. Because that on my net sheet from a realtor, I know that I've got 15% net. So, 200,000 times 15% off, I can sell it to you for 170,000. I've got a free and clear house. Is that a deal that you're going to make any money on? Because I wouldn't touch that. I would stay as far away from that thing. I don't know about Stephen or Tom, but I would stay as far away from that thing as I could because it's not my business model. Would that be within your business model, and would you make money off that thing?
Absolutely. As long as we can formulate the two main factors. One, what am I going to be paying for the money used to buy that property? Okay. So, again, if I'm going to go out and borrow it at 10%, it's not going to be the same as me borrowing it most commonly from the seller at no rate. Okay, so it's easy to calculate. It's hundreds of dollars in between one payment and the other. When it comes time to make use of the property by putting in an occupant, the money coming in is going to be bigger than the money going out. The other is time. I mean, I will pay you beyond that. I will pay you the $200,000, Mike, in that example. Okay. If I can have some time. Let's use an exaggerated example. If my first payment to you is 2 years from now, between now and 2 years, I'm going to make that $30,000, $40,000 on a $200,000 house just in that time frame, even if we ended up paying you that $200,000. Does that make sense? If I got $2,000 coming in income for 2 years and nothing going out, there's some serious money coming in.
Right. Absolutely.
So time and cost of money.
Does that scare the other Tom or Stephen? Because it would make me nervous. But I've seen Gabe do this over and over again, so it's absolutely nothing that makes him nervous. And although some may think it's impossible, it's absolutely not impossible. But I think it's right. I mean, I look at vacant house finding and I think, well, that's impossible. But Stephen, you do it all the time. So, of the three models that you guys have, Stephen, if you were going to ask Gabe or Tom a question about what they do, what question would that be?
I was actually about to ask him a question, which was, I already know the answer. I know the answer is yes, but I still have to ask the question. I know the answer is yes because I just last year I purchased a property that Gabe would under terms Gabe would really like. Long and short, the house was actually worth about $100,000 fixed up. It did need about $25,000 of work in it, but we picked it up for $25,000 with zero interest. Zero money down, and we're paying a lady about $500 a month. Long and short, we're renting the place out for $1,350 a month, and so it's an incredible deal. I got private money to do the rehab, so cash flows exceptionally well. And so the fact that I've done a deal like that, which isn't even close to some of the examples you mentioned, Gabe, I know that this has to be true, but you've really been able to have a seller forego payments for 12 to 24 months while you have it rented out or lease options or owner finance out to someone else? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the answer is a straight yes. People will wait for their money, especially when you encounter people that have no money coming in anyways. As you would know, buying vacant houses, how much money did they have coming in? So all you're saying is, listen, can I just keep giving you what you're getting now? Does that make sense?
Right, it does.
And so that's one thing. But you can go even beyond that. We can spend hours, and I love it. I love talking about creative financing, creative ways of finding ways to get the sellers what they want. You can go as far as, Mr. Seller, you got this house is worth $100,000. I'd be willing to buy it for $100,000. You owe $130,000. Do you want to write a check or a money order is fine for $30,000?
Wow.
Hey, Tom, hearing what Stephen and Gabriel do you have a question for either one of them about their business model?
Well, I think it's interesting. I'm just kind of absorbing all of this. I am so laser focused on wholesaling that it leaves a little bit of room for really anything else, because I really am just kind of like in our office, it's like we're pit bulls on this stuff. So we're only looking for equity and motivation. I think that this definitely expands the horizon a little bit here. So I'm just kind of absorbing it, but I think it's great. It's just as I was hearing the conversation, I was thinking back to an account we just recently had. We were able to structure something similar. It was a subject to deal, but we were surprised to find that the seller actually brought up this point of not having to have any money down. And what we did is we delayed the payment, but now, just playing this back in my head, we probably could have delayed the payment for a year rather than the 2 months that we did. So I think it's interesting. But yeah, absolutely, that's great. I don't have a question, but I think it makes sense, and it sounds like a great strategy.
And Gabriel, knowing that Stephen and Tom do, any thoughts or questions for either of them?
I think those business models are absolutely great money makers as well. I think we all mentioned and agree that it's all about the marketing. And as much as we try to control who it is calls us, we end up getting a mix of them. So we all get the opportunity to do that, and we definitely have the chance to. I don't think I've done assignment of contracts. I've done simultaneous closing where we actually close it and resell it and do really well on that as well. Vacant houses, repairs. You need to be able to understand all of those and be able to make money every which way. But I do think that each one of us ends up going a certain direction because of our own personal reasons. Me, I'm just a little bit too lazy to do too many transactions all the time. And I really enjoy it. I get a high when I can come up with, hey, here's how I can do that. And there's only one thing that I'm looking for is the seller willing to cooperate? If not, it's okay. We don't look for it. Going back to the marketing, of course, we go and look for what we want, and what we search for is equity. Equity is the one that we look for, and I actually go and look for those that have the least possibility of needing repairs. So I go into better neighborhoods with equity in the property. That's my target market. But then you get all those other people that just won't follow the guideline. No, they need repairs, and it's in the wrong neighborhood. And what do? So you got to find a way to work with it. And
so where I go after, I want to go after the junky houses, the ugly houses. You're exactly the opposite. So, interesting. So, I have another topic, and all of you, I think, have participated in this venture before, and I want to get all of your account or your take on it. It's something I've never done, but a lot of new investors do it almost like right after they're become an investor. They go and do this, and that is put a bandit sign out. So if I could go around the proverbial room and someone raise their hand, someone start out, tell me your experience with bandit signs. Do you do it? Do you still do it? Was it worth doing? Would you do it again? That kind of stuff.
I want to jump right in here because I think they're great. This is Tom. So here's what let me finish, Michael. Bandit signs, to me, in my territory, and what I found with my students, they're okay with sellers. But where we really leverage the bandit signs are with the buyers, and that we use. I do have a few students, and I don't do bandit signs myself because they're not legal here in the city, but we do them outside in the large part of the county. But the way we crush the bandit signs is really with finding exactly the right buyers and exactly the right subdivision. So it's just part of the protocol. 25 bandit signs. They usually say the same thing. Desperate. Right, it's a big, huge header. 3, 2, 1, cash buyers only, telephone number. And as far as buyers go, we love them. Sellers, I haven't really ever tried them, and I don't really know many of my students who have either, who had a lot of success, but that could just be unique. So that's my take on it.
So your bandit signs are bandit signs for buyers?
Absolutely, yeah. That's when we really want to start to narrow down our buyers. Especially if we have a property, we'll put out the protocol is 25. So every time we get a property, 25 go. If the house is vacant, we put one right in the front yard. Okay. If it's not vacant, if it's occupied, then we just put them just around the intersections and things like that.
Gotcha.
Thanks for listening to Buy, Sell, Fix, Flip. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we are back in 3, 2, 1.
Someone else want to chime in on bandit signs?
Yeah, I'll jump right in.
I've used bandit signs. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll jump right in. To Tom's point, when he says the number 25, because when we sell a property, oftentimes that's our exact number. Actually, it's 25 bandit signs as far as trying to sell a property. And I wholeheartedly agree with Tom. They work incredible to sell a property. And one of the things that we've had happen multiple times is we've sold properties to cash buyers who are not investors at all, which is always kind of nice because they can usually pay a little bit more or pay that top number that we're asking, because to them, when we offer the property at anything below a perceived market value or what have you, it comes off, it's a tremendous thing for them. So they definitely work great to sell properties. And I think Michael kind of set me up asking this question with him knowing my experience with Bandit. So I used to use Bandit almost exclusively to purchase property. I mean, we're going back, 7, 8 years, 9 years at this point. When that's what my budget afforded, and that's what I did. And I bought a lot of properties that way. The problem is, kind of to Tom's point, is they're also illegal in my area as well. And they weren't a big deal at first. Everybody had them up. I mean, people still have them up to this day. But I guess the city at one point decided to really crack down, and I was going to be one of their test cases. And long and short, they fined me they sued me for about $13,000, I want to say, for the amount of bandit signs that I had. I mean, I had them out everywhere. I mean, they were just left and right. Again, they were working very well for me. When we would do a bandit sign run, I know some guys would say, oh, we're going to put out 20, we're going to put out 10. I mean, it would be nothing for us to put out 150, 200 signs, one shot. And, I got fined by the city for $13,000, and, they were literally just delivering lawsuits because they were suing me sign by sign by sign. And so I was literally having, I forgot what the person's called, the guy who knocks on your door and serves you. I was getting served like every day for like a month. I mean, it was just horrible. And I mean, it became embarrassing at certain points because my neighbors were kind of like, what the heck is going on? And long and short, I got in front of it. I hired a pretty good attorney, and we went down to the hearing, and I was able to get that bandit sign, that lawsuit reduced down from $13,000 to, I think we paid about $600 or something, because I had a pretty compelling argument, which were, look, I'm buying houses that have all these back taxes owed, all of these water bills and gas bills, all these city-owned entities. We're bringing tremendous amount of revenue back to the city. We're putting these properties back on the tax roll. We're allowing the neighborhood to look better, and I'm the bad guy. And they kind of saw my point. Fortunately, I had somebody pretty competent, dealing with the case. And so, but at the same token, kind of after getting a spanking that bad, I just didn't want to deal with that anymore. And so that's how we kind of came from using bandit signs over into some of the other, marketing strategies, direct marketing we use to get in touch with the seller. So I have to say, I still think that they're a great form of marketing, even to find sellers, but the headache of it, it just wasn't worth it to me. So we really don't use it, with the exception of, like Tom does, 20, 25 of them here and there just to find the buyers.
Gabriel, do you have any bandit sign experience?
I do, actually, and I'm going to have to agree. Bandit signs are used to sell a house. They've got to be on if not the top on the list, it's certainly way up there. As far as finding a buyer for your house, they absolutely work. I have used them to buy houses, and kind of like Stephen, I used to put out. I had some people that I hired, and every weekend we'd put out 200 of them, and we did that for a little bit of time, months. And same experience. The city starts to notice, and they come around and they they start telling you don't do it, and then they get more aggressive. And I also got fined. Interesting, when the guy shows up, at your door, and he's got his gun on his belt, and it's like, what the heck? He actually made me walk him over to my storage room, and I had cases of them. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do? So we kind of stopped doing that. It's all about return on investment is the answer to signs or anything else, I believe. You measure out what you spend on it and how many houses do they buy you. And, is that costing you more than the alternative? And to me, it's like Stephen said, it's too much work. It's if you can match it with some other way of advertising via newspaper, or of course the number one has always been, and I think will be, direct mail marketing. If you need some more, just mail some more.
Right. It's amazing to me, but because I have quite a few coaching students, and some of them use Bandit Signs just like religiously. It's like they want to use Bandit Signs before they want to use direct mail, and I just cringe at it because I know the trouble that some people have gotten into. But I guess some jurisdictions they kind of look the other way on that kind of stuff. So I guess if you're in an area where Bandit Signs is acceptable and not necessarily illegal, fall forward and do it. I'm curious that all three of you said that they're used for buyers, because I bet you if I lined up 100 new investors right off the street and I asked them what's a Bandit Sign for, they would all say to find a seller. I don't think any of them would say to find a buyer. And so I think that's a very unique approach for the Bandit Sign. Personally, I just use the MLS, but that's my thing. So to change the subject a little bit, and this is a subject that a lot of people really struggle with, and we're going to have three, I bet, uniquely different answers. And when you guys, if you could help me out on this one and tell the folks that are listening how you arrive at the difference of ARV and As-Is. So you have a property, you're like, someone calls in, you ask them all the questions or whatever you do to arrive at their answers, but how do you determine the As-Is value and the ARV value? Who wants to start?
Gabe, you want to jump in?
Sure. ARV, I believe that stands for after repair value. How do you arrive at that? To me, it's just going straight into MLS or any reporting program or agency that provides you with that multiple listing service data. And the reason for that is because those are retail buyers, which means they have to go and comply with lender requirements and conditions that the property must meet in order to sell, and thereby we can assume that they were repaired, and what they are normally selling for is then considered the after repaired value, what they're selling for, if that makes sense on that. Now, the as-is, there's different ways that I've heard about it, but basically, as-is just makes, to me, is what can I pay for it now? And the only way that I can figure it out is because I have not found a way to find an MLS service that says, okay, give me all the properties that sold in a condition where they needed repairs, average out the repairs they need, and what did they averagely sell for? I haven't found that. So I've not been able to find a way to search for an as-is value right now. Basically, all I do is figure out what is it going to be worth when the repairs are completed, what's it going to cost me, both in money and time, which time converted into money, and then also what kind of profit do I want, and that is the value I will place on the house in the condition that is in now.
So do you do a stacked formula? So do all houses get the same cost of repairs, or are you assuming different factors?
They do not get all the same amount of repairs. Obviously, some need more, some need less. After doing 1, 10, 100, number of repairs, you kind of look back and look at and see that, okay, most of them fall under a few categories. It needs some repairs, it needs more repairs, it needs lots of repairs, and we have found that the ones that need some will cost me about this much, and the ones that need more will cost about this much, and the ones that need lots of it cost about this much. So after that point, it's just, okay, does it need some more or lots? Now, remember that I intend to keep this property, although sometimes we don't. I mean, we've also done turnaround times of sold over the weekend type of thing. But our business model is to keep them for a while and also to sell it for top dollar, which means our repairs is usually going to be more than the average. It's probably more of a remodel versus a repair, because one, I'm okay keeping it longer. It just makes me more money. And the other thing is that I'm going to be able to ask, by the way, normally more than 100% of what the market says is worth, because I will be offering terms to my buyer as well. We start off usually at around 110% of what the market says it's worth. So another revenue. So we'll spend a lot of money. I'll throw, the last numbers I use is either 10,000, 20,000, or 30,000.
So
if I'm wrong either way, it doesn't matter.
So if it's stage like a little repair, you figure 10,000 in cost. If it's a medium repair, 20. A lot of repair, 30. And
correct.
And your model now could be it's definitely different than mine, because you're looking for the pretty house originally, or the newer.
Correct.
Where I'm looking for the ugly thing.
Another thing to keep in mind, sorry, Mike, another thing to keep in mind is I'm not looking for the lower value house. Usually it's going to be medium to a little bit more than that. So depending on the market, we could have been at 150, 200,000, and there was a time where our local market, you couldn't find anything under 250,000. So when you're talking about a $250,000 average price, you need to have that piece of information to realize why 10, 20, and 30,000 it's a justifiable number, since we're not talking about a $20,000 or $30,000 house.
Okay. Someone else want to explain how they arrive at ARV and As-Is?
Sure, I can give you a little bit of I think my perspective is a little unique. I think that valuations, which is really what we're talking about, right, which is how much should we pay for a property, is a very slippery slope. I think that what I have learned is that valuations are one of the biggest ways. It's absolutely a showstopper for wholesalers. Now, this is from a wholesaling perspective, but what I can tell you is what I find is that people confront valuations on the simple question of, what should I offer the seller for this property? And what they do is they approach this by trying to figure out the ARV and the as-is, and then, God forbid, what is it going to cost to repair, which is a totally unqualifiable number as far as I'm concerned, because no one really can agree on that. But what they do is they pause the sales process and they start digging in deeper. And I think that's a huge mistake. So I think, to me, I don't really go by the ARV. Michael, unlike you, I kind of look for the ugly duckling. A lot of the houses that we buy are dilapidated. They have problems. They've been ignored. They're vacant. So what we do is we back away from that. If we can't come up with a price in 5 minutes, we're doing something wrong. And the way we do that is we just basically have a two-step process. We just look at similar property that is sold in the past 6 months, and similar meaning same subdivision, 15% of the square footage in the past 6 months. And then we just look at that number and make sure that we can price it. We take about the average of the three lowest. We take about 80% of that average. And then we just look at the active listings as the second step. This is actually done by our VA now. And we just take a look at the actives and say, okay, well, we're lower than the actives. A lot of our customers are agents. Our cash buyers come through agents, because we usually find that we get top dollar through agents. So as long as we're lower than what's available to an agent cash buyer, that's typically a really good deal. Some of them don't even look at comps, though. The agents will be at the property and we'll watch this unfold. They'll say, well, everything is over 110, but you can have this property for 98. So this is a good deal. And that's really what we look at. I think when you start to get into ARV from a wholesaler's perspective, I find that there's two kinds of people. There's the very, very confident, like, I've done this before. I have a construction background. I know exactly what it costs to rehab a house. You have that guy. And then you have the guy who's like, you know what? I don't really know anything about this at all. So there's no middle ground. And the people are really thinking about that number, but I find that the rehabbers really can't seem to agree on that themselves. So I feel funny trying to figure that out on our side. I kind of just leave that to the rehabbers, and so that's I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but I kind of have a unique take on it. But that's, we just kind of back away from valuations and not try to figure it out.
It's an interesting formula that you're taking the average of the lowest three and multiplying it by 80%. Because when you do that, you're kind of getting rid of. I mean, that's a good safety net. So because. Yeah, I can see that. How about you, Stephen? How do you deal with ARV and As-Is?
Yeah, so my market, it's a little interesting because Philadelphia is we're a very old city. We have a lot of people, it's a lot of population, and we have extreme variances sometimes between if you have a property on 2nd Street. And it could be almost the exact same square footage and same look of house as the house on 1st Street, and the same as a house on 3rd Street. And all three blocks can vary sometimes drastically from one another. And so I wish that I could be like Tom, and it could take us 5 minutes sometime to do it. And I understand where Tom's coming from because I'm familiar with a little with the Port St. Lucie area. But for us, unfortunately, we have to spend a little bit more time oftentimes on it to really justify our numbers. So we take two approaches when looking at comps and kind of deriving at the ARV. The first approach that I'll take is we are searching for that as-is value. So if I have a substance property that is, say, we kind of classify them in one of three areas. We have as the worst, the shell condition property, so meaning pretty much nothing can be saved in a house, and you have to replace everything, all the major systems, the roof, windows, kitchens, baths, everything has to be replaced, all the mechanical systems and so forth. That's the shell condition. Then we also have what we call like the grandmom house, and so that's a house your grandmother would live in, where everything is functional, but it's just old. So it absolutely works, but the kitchen's yellow, and then as the last category, I guess it would be the pretty houses, which is, again, our houses are so old that it's very rare. It does happen a little sometime, and I've actually seen it a little bit more recently, but for the most part, 95% of the houses that we buy fall into category 1 or 2, being a shell or a grandma condition house. So the first thing that I try to do when we purchase a property or looking to get a property under contract is figure out what an REO or like a HUD or a Fannie Mae cash sale is for that property. So what other bank-owned properties have sold in that area in a very, very close proximity, with very similar square footage, very similar in basically the same condition. And kind of to Tom's point, he's absolutely right. What I will call, and I've seen it happen just so many times. That's why I don't even, when someone asks me, oh, what's the rehab? I just will say, I don't know. Because the truth of the matter is I don't when it comes to their perspective of the rehab. I've seen a property that one investor has adamantly said, oh, this is a $15,000 rehab, that another investor will come in and say, no, this is a $55,000 rehab. And it's just like, wow, just such a huge disparity. So kind of to Tom's point is I just want to see what have other houses in that area sold for cash within the last 6 to 12 months if I have to go that far. And so I will say, okay, look, that is our as-is value. Or in other words, that's what we can feel pretty safe that the house will be able to sell for. And so then we just back off our number of, okay, well, look, what's our minimum profit that we want to make, what's the seller willing to take, and then that's kind of how we derive at what we're going to offer. So I'll look at that, and then will also oftentimes run like the after repair value numbers as well, because sometimes we just won't see an REO sale, we won't see a bank owned the HUD sale or something like that. So we'll have to look at what the property is worth fixed up. And for my area, oftentimes, again, because the houses are so old that when they oftentimes do come in and fix them up, they're actually doing pretty nice job, pretty nice rehabs on them. I mean, granite kitchens, stainless steel. These things are extremely common, even on houses that only have a value of, $99,000, $120,000. And so what we'll do is we'll use a price per square. We'll use the maximum acceptable offer, a formula, if you will, which is the ARV times 0.7 or 0.65 minus the repair value, and that gives us our number that we feel that an investor will likely pay for the property. And as far as the biggest number that we probably need to talk about is how we define, which is the repair number. And a repair number we usually define somewhere between $30 to $40 per square foot. Again, I'm in a very old, the properties here are very old, so they absolutely will need, if it's a 1,000 square foot house, they'll absolutely need sometimes 30, 40,000, sometimes plus in rehab. And so that's kind of how we're defining, how we make our offers and how we define ARV and As-Is.
It's amazing to me that we guys have 3 different locations in the country, and you all look at ARV and As-Is differently, which has to be really difficult for new investors around the country when they're getting into it, because they hear now they're going to hear 3 different approaches and picking, which one do they use. So someone chime in and answer the question for them. What do they do? I mean, here you guys are seasoned investors, been doing it forever. What does a new investor do to determine what model they should use? How do they go about figuring it out?
Michael, if I could chime in there, I'll tell you what I would suggest to anyone new is to not try and figure it out. One thing we say in our office is just lock it up low enough. So we have a sign that says just lock it up low enough. So the bottom line is, if you lock it up low enough, let's keep in mind, as far as from a wholesaling perspective, what is wholesaling? We're really just a pawn shop for houses. It really has very little to do your craft with real estate. So let's stop trying to figure out real estate, and let's just lock it up low and then sell the piece of paper for as much money as possible, as fast as possible. So that's kind of my model, and I know that with Stephen and you guys are a little bit different. I understand that, but for us, I would say don't figure it out. You get into valuations, back away. Just find 3 similar properties, the 3 lowest that have sold in the past 6 months, and just get 80% of that, and that's usually a safe zone. If you lock it up too low, you'll make more money. If you lock it up too high, you can always go and renegotiate it later. There's no negative consequence to doing that. So that would be my opinion, is try not to figure it out. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's, I think, for a newbie or for a rookie wholesaler, I think that would be, the fastest approach to revenue.
Yeah.
I think it's value in definitely what Tom's saying. Tom, what you're saying. I think the key is for the investor, because I think we will derive it kind of the same number most times. I think the key is truly looking at those low comp numbers and not looking at a number that fits, a number that you want to make fit the seller's asking price.
Right.
You know what I mean? So sometimes we all have seen wholesalers all the time just using these outrageous comps to saying, the house is worth this, after fixed up it's worth that, and it's like bull crap. You know what I mean? It's not worth that. So I think the key is if you be honest, as long as they're honest with themselves and saying, well, look, this is genuinely the last 3 properties that have sold within close proximity. same apples to apples kind of house, and and then using that as their comp basis. Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree.
Well, there's this. I don't know if it's a rule that I kind of either adapted to or like, but if you don't know if what to value something at, if you embarrass yourself with your offer and it gets accepted, that's probably pretty good. Like, so if I don't know how to value something, if I pick a number that is obviously so low that I know I'm going to make money on it, then they say yes, that's probably a fair number.
I love it. That's a good way to put it.
Well, and can I add to that? That's a good way to start. But I think you do need to eventually learn your numbers, because I can't tell you, there's been many a time that I've bought properties from sellers, and they say, yeah, we've talked to other investors, but they offered me, just this like substantially, outrageously lower amount, and I was able to get the deal, and not just get the deal and make a tight profit of $5-7 grand, but make the deal, make 5 figures in spread, and it's like, so you can start there, but don't live there. You know what I mean? You do need to become educated, because there is a such thing as bottom fishing so low that you never catch any fish. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
just my food for thought.
Yep. Gabe, anything to add?
You know what? We do this for so long, and it's amazing. We continue to learn if we just pay attention and hang around with other people that are doing it. We continue to learn. I'm listening to both Tom and Steven and what they're doing. Earlier I mentioned I just haven't been able to find that MLS that gives me that in need of repair value, and here it is. They're saying that it's available, is what I hear them say, and that is, it's the same system. Just look at the ones that were purchased for cash and that were REOs, and those could be assumed to have needed repairs. And that's one way to find that as-is value. That's great. I'm super excited to listen to you guys and how you guys discovered that, and that's interesting to me because I've never looked at it, as simple as that may be. As far as how to determine the value of something, I think I do want to interject that it's important to know what your business plan, what your business model, what you intend to do with the house. Because if I intend to sell it to, a wholesale buyer, then, we do need to figure out what they're buying for. And I think I heard Steven say something about that. I can't remember the letters you used, but I think it was something along the lines of, what is your maximum expected offer? Something like that. Did you say, Steven?
Yeah, maximum acceptable offer. That's a little formula in a lot of investors.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not looking at what you intend to sell it for, but what you expect for somebody else to come offer you. That's fantastic. And the other thing I heard you say is you do have some sort of formula to figure out your repair costs. In your case, $30 to $40 per square foot, and it's because of the age of your market and whatnot. All great information. Everybody, I think, does have to vary a little bit on how they do it.
Right.
And there is no answer, I don't think, how to figure it all out. And we just have to, make the offers low enough to where we feel it's a good chance. And then Tom mentioned, hey, if it doesn't match up after you do some further discovery, Mr. Seller, let's have another conversation.
Right. Guys, I've enjoyed this. I appreciate you helping me on my 50th podcast. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.